This is Only Horror. If you can hear me, then it's already too late. Let's begin. She was never interested in the crib. The woman who bought my son's old crib never came to my house. That was why it took me longer to understand how much she already knew. This happened last May when my husband was working out of state for almost 3 weeks. Our son Eli had just turned 3, and I was trying to clear out baby stuff we still had boxed up in the apartment. Money was tight, so I listed his old crib and 2 bags of clothes and blankets on Facebook Marketplace. The crib sold first. About an hour after I posted it, a woman named Dana messaged asking if it was still available. Her profile looked normal. Family pictures, a few years of posts, comments from relatives. She asked practical questions too, whether all the hardware was included and whether the wood had scratches. Nothing about it felt off. We agreed to meet the next afternoon in the parking lot of a church about 10 minutes from my apartment. She said she drove a white SUV and would bring cash. Before leaving, I broke the crib down and loaded it into my husband's SUV while Eli watched cartoons. I was rushing because he was cranky and had not napped well. Right before we left, I took one more picture of the baby clothes to send another buyer who wanted to see what was included. I spread some of it out on the couch, snapped the picture, and sent it without thinking about what else was in the frame. That part mattered later. I got to the church a few minutes early. It was around 4:30, still bright out, and there were enough cars around that I felt fine. Dana pulled in maybe 5 minutes later. The first thing I noticed was that she stayed in her SUV for a few seconds before getting out. Not long enough to be openly weird, just long enough that I noticed. Then she stepped out and smiled like she knew me already. She looked about mid-30s, hair tied back, light gray sweater, large purse. No one else was with her. She thanked me twice for meeting her instead of making her come to my place. I opened the back of my SUV. She did not walk straight over to the crib pieces. She looked at me first, then into my car, then past me to where Eli was strapped into his car seat with a snack cup. I had brought him because I did not have anyone to watch him. She smiled when she saw him and asked how old he was. I said 3. She nodded slowly and said that was a sweet age. Then she asked if he had already moved into a big boy bed. I remember pausing before I answered, because it seemed like an oddly specific question from someone buying a used crib. But I just said, yes. She crouched a little, so she could wave at Eli through the window. He looked away and kept eating crackers. She laughed softly and said he was shy. Then she asked his name. That was the first question that bothered me. I kind of laughed and said I was weird about giving out my kid's name to people I did not know. She smiled and said that was smart. Then she finally looked at the crib pieces and asked if everything was there. I showed her the screws and hardware in a freezer bag. She paid in cash and started helping me move the pieces into her SUV. While we were loading it, she said she had been looking for a crib for her niece. She also mentioned her sister had been stressed about getting the nursery ready, which sounded normal enough. What stood out more was that every time she talked about the crib, her attention kept drifting back to Eli. Before she closed her trunk, she asked if I was the one selling the baby clothes too. I said yeah. She asked if she could see them quickly. in case she wanted to take both. I told her I did not bring them, but I could show her the pictures on my phone. She stepped closer while I opened the listing. She stopped on the picture I had taken that morning in the apartment. There were pajamas, blankets, and a little fleece daycare blanket in the pile. She asked if that dinosaur blanket was included too. I said probably. Then she smiled at Eli again and said he looked like the kind of kid who would have loved dinosaurs. I did not answer that. I just locked my phone and said if she wanted the clothes too, I could message her later. Then she thanked me again and left. I drove home thinking she was a little odd, but that was it. 2 days later, I was dropping Eli off at daycare when I saw a white SUV parked across the street from the building. That by itself would not have meant anything except it had the same dent above the rear wheel well as Dana's. I told myself it probably was not the same one. That afternoon when I picked Eli up, one of the teachers asked if my sister had come by earlier asking about him. I said no. She said a woman had stopped at the front desk around lunchtime and asked whether Eli was there yet because she was dropping something off for his mom. The woman left when they told her she needed to be on the approved list. I asked what she looked like. The teacher said white, maybe 30s or 40s, hair tied back, very polite. I felt sick immediately. I asked if she had said my name too. The teacher said yes. I got Eli back in the car and locked the doors before I even started the engine. I sat there for a minute, calling my husband, then the daycare director, then the non-emergency police number. An officer met me at my apartment that evening and took a report. He was polite, but I could tell I did not have much. A woman bought a crib. A similar SUV had been near the daycare. A woman had asked about my son and left. He told me to save the messages and call right away if I saw the vehicle again. That night I went back through the listing pictures to see if there was anything obvious that connected me to Eli or the daycare. Then I opened the photo of the baby clothes I had sent Dana in the parking lot. The blanket. His full first name was stitched across the corner in blue thread. I remember my stomach dropping so hard, it felt like I had missed a step. The blanket was one the daycare required for nap time, and because of how I had spread the clothes out on the couch, part of Eli's cubby tag was visible too. If you zoomed in, you could read the daycare initials printed under his name. That was the point where everything changed for me. Up until then, I had still been trying to believe this was some misunderstanding. After that, I knew she had not learned his name from talking to me at the church. She got it from the photo. The next morning, I deleted both listings and changed all my privacy settings. My husband told his boss he was coming home early, but he could not leave until the following night. I barely slept. 2 days later, I saw the white SUV again. I was walking Eli from the apartment to my car for daycare when it rolled slowly past the entrance to our complex. Not speeding, not stopping, just slow enough that I noticed the driver's side window was down a crack. I could not see the driver clearly, but I knew it was the same vehicle. I called the police again. This time an officer came out and sat with me while I showed him screenshots of the listing and the messages. When he saw the blanket photo, he got a lot more serious. He asked whether Dana had said anything unusual at the meetup, besides asking my son's age. I told him about the questions: the big boy bed, his name, the dinosaur blanket, whether I was selling the clothes too. Then he asked something that still sticks with me. He said, "Did she seem more interested in the crib or in confirming details about your child?" I said, "My child." He nodded like that answer fit too easily. According to him, they had seen cases where people used marketplace and parent groups to collect information on kids and mothers. The real reveal came the next afternoon. The daycare director called and asked if I had left a note in Eli's cubby that morning. I said no. She told me a folded receipt had been found inside with only 2 things written on it: my son's full name and our apartment number. Nothing else. I drove straight there and picked him up early. The director said no one knew how long it had been there. They checked the hallway camera, but there was a gap because the preschool wing camera had been glitching on and off all week. They gave the note to police. My husband came home that night. We never found out for sure whether Dana put the note there herself or had someone else do it. The police could not prove enough from the account because it was deleted by the time they tried tracing it. The profile that had looked so normal disappeared completely. We changed Eli's daycare within the week. 3 months later, when our lease ended, we moved. What bothers me now is how little contact she actually needed. She never came to my apartment. She never said anything openly threatening. She just asked normal enough questions. Then she watched what I showed her. I did meet her in public. I did what I was supposed to do. And it still was not the crib she wanted. It was my son's name, his daycare, and whatever she planned to do once she was sure she had the right child. If you enjoyed tonight's story, drop a comment and tell me where you're listening from. And if you want more horror like this, make sure you're subscribed. New stories are coming soon. Until next time, keep the lights on.